The late afternoon sun spilled like warm honey over Grandma Susan's garden, bathing the world in a soft, golden glow. Laughter, pure and bright, bubbled up from the yard where 7-year-old Lily tumbled in the grass with Lucky, a scruffy dog of indeterminate breed and unwavering devotion. He was all matted fur, happy panting, and a perpetually thumping tail. Lily buried her face in his neck, her small hands fisted in his coarse coat. "You're my bestest boy, Lucky," she murmured, her words muffled by fur. The scent of pine from the surrounding woods and damp earth from Susan's freshly watered petunias hung sweet in the air, the smell of home. The crunch of tires on the gravel driveway shattered the peace. A sleek, silver sedan, looking alien against the rustic backdrop of the clapboard house, came to a halt. The doors opened, and out stepped Maggie and Franklin, Lily's parents, their city-sharp clothes a stark contrast to the gentle countryside. Maggie, in a tailored blazer and heels that sank slightly into the soft ground, surveyed the scene with a thinly veiled look of distaste. "Lily," she called, her voice crisp and devoid of warmth. "Come here. We're leaving." Susan appeared on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. A knot of apprehension tightened in her chest, a familiar feeling whenever her daughter-in-law arrived unannounced. She saw the hope drain from Lily's face, replaced by a stubborn pout. "What's this, Maggie?" Susan asked, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "We've enrolled her in the conservatory prep program." "Piano lessons," Maggie announced, as if discussing a corporate merger. "It starts Monday." Franklin agrees it's for the best. Franklin, standing a step behind his wife, offered a weak, apologetic smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Lily scrambled to her feet, Lucky pressing against her legs as if sensing his small human needed a guard. "But I want to stay here." "Don't be ridiculous," Maggie snapped. She took a step closer, her nose wrinkling as Lucky let out a low, protective growl. "And get away from that filthy animal. Honestly, Susan, I don't know how you let her roll around with that. Dogs are covered in germs. Lucky is not filthy." Lily's voice rose, her small body trembling with indignation. She wrapped her arms tighter around the dog's neck. Susan descended the porch steps, her expression a mixture of sorrow and quiet fury. "He's family, Maggie, and he's cleaner than some people's attitudes." Maggie's lips thinned into a razor-sharp line. She ignored Susan, her focus entirely on her husband. "Do you see what I mean, Franklin? This is exactly the problem. This place, it will ruin her. If I hadn't pulled you out of here, you'd be just another country bumpkin fixing tractors for a living." She gestured vaguely at the peaceful landscape as if it were a slum. Franklin flinched, a casual cruelty of her words landing their intended blow. The accusation hung in the air, suffocating the last of the afternoon's warmth. For Lily, it was the final straw. "I'm not going," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Not without Grandma. Not without Lucky." She made a break for it, a desperate dash toward the familiar sanctuary of the woods. But Maggie was faster. She lunged, grabbing Lily's thin arm. "You will do as you are told." "No," Lily thrashed, her small fists beating uselessly against her mother's grip. Franklin moved in, his large hands closing around her other arm, his face a mask of conflicted misery. "Let me go. Let me go." The scene devolved into a frantic, ugly struggle. Lily's cakes, her parents' restraining hold, Susan's horrified plea of "Stop it. You're scaring her," all tangled together. Lucky, sensing his girl's terror, began to bark sharp, frantic, desperate yelps that echoed the chaos. In the turmoil, Lily twisted with a surge of pure adrenaline, her arm slipping from her father's sweaty grasp. She stumbled, caught her balance, and shot away from them like a startled fawn. She didn't look back. She just ran, her pink sneakers a blur against the greening fields, her breath coming in ragged sobs. Lucky, freed from the immediate conflict, bounded after her, his barks trailing behind them as they were swallowed by the encroaching twilight. For a moment, there was only stunned silence, broken by the chirping of crickets. Then Maggie's anger, robbed of its target, curdled into something colder, sharper. Annie, Lily. Her first shout was sharp, authoritative. The second was laced with fear. Lily. Get back here right now, Lily. The name echoed across the fields and was met with only silence. The sun had dipped below the tree line, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. Long, menacing shadows stretched from the woods. Maggie spun on Susan, her face pale and her eyes wild with a terror that was quickly solidifying into blame. "This is your fault," she hissed, tears welling. "All your fault. I knew we shouldn't have left her here with you. I knew it was a mistake." Ignoring the venom, Susan's own fear was a cold stone in her stomach. Arguing won't find her. "Franklin, you take the east field toward the old creek. Maggie, the road. I'll check the path to the miller's farm." They split apart, their voices tearing through the quiet evening, calling a name that received no answer. The world seemed to shrink to that single, desperate purpose. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a fresh jolt of dread through them. An hour bled into another, the darkness now thick and total. As Maggie stumbled along the dusty shoulder of the main road, a pair of headlights cut through the gloom. An old pickup truck slowed, the window rolling down. "Everything all right, ma'am?" a grizzled farmer asked, his face etched with concern. "My daughter," Maggie choked out, her voice raw. "She's missing. Little girl, 7 years old, in a pink shirt." The farmer's expression softened with pity, then sharpened. "Just a ways back, I saw something shiny on the side of the road. Thought it was just litter." But he leaned over, retrieved something from his dashboard, and held it out. It was a small, silver hairpin, shaped like a butterfly. Maggie's breath caught in her throat. She took it, the metal cold against her trembling fingers. She had clipped it into Lily's hair herself that morning. It was hers. The faint glimmer of hope that came with finding a trail was instantly extinguished by a wave of ice-cold terror. Lily wouldn't have just dropped it. The clip was tight. Someone else had been here. The cold night ebbed at their exposed skin, smelling of damp earth and decay. Out of the overgrown dirt track, a hulking silhouette blotted out the stars. A long-abandoned factory, its windows like vacant eyes. Lucky, a golden retriever mix of boundless energy and unwavering loyalty, was transformed. The dog's usual playful demeanor was gone, replaced by desperate, almost feral urgency. He strained against the rusted chain-link fence, his barks sharp and percussive in the oppressive silence. Clamped gently but firmly in his teeth was a small, glittery butterfly hairpin, Lily's favorite. "For God's sake, Franklin, can you shut that thing up?" Maggie's voice was a raw, frayed nerve. Her city-chic jacket was useless against the rural chill, and her face was a pale mask of terror. She glared at the dog, then at her mother-in-law. "This is insane. We're out here in the middle of nowhere, following a stupid dog on a wild goose chase while my daughter could be anywhere." Susan didn't flinch. Her weathered hands rested on Lucky's heaving flank, a silent gesture of solidarity. She met Maggie's accusing gaze, her own eyes, deep-set and knowing, holding a conviction that words couldn't convey. She had seen this look in Lucky before, when a fox was near the chickens, when a storm was rolling in over the hills. It was a look of pure, undiluted certainty. "Trust him," her eyes pleaded with her son. "Just this once, trust him." Franklin stood between them, a man torn in two. His phone's flashlight cut a nervous beam across the padlock gate. "Mom, maybe Maggie's right. There's nothing here. It's been derelict for years. We should check the old quarry road again." "No," Susan said, A voice quiet but firm. He brought us here. He has her scent. He has a hairpin he probably found in the dirt. Maggie shot back, her voice cracking. She turned on Susan, her fear curdling into blame. This is your fault. If you hadn't filled her head with nonsense about this place. If we had just taken her back to the city. As she belongs, you're as old and stupid as that mutt. The words hung in the air, sharper than the cold. Susan's face tightened, but her gaze never left the factory. Franklin, unable to bear the conflict, made the decision. Come on, we're wasting time. He took his wife's arm, guiding her back towards the car. They walked away, their footsteps crunching on the gravel, leaving Susan and Lucky enveloped in the darkness. As the distance grew, Lucky's barks dissolved into a heartbroken whimper, a lonely, mournful sound that echoed off the cold steel of the gate. A few hundred yards down the road, the weight of it all finally broke Maggie. Her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the damp ground, her body racked with gut-wrenching sobs. My baby, she gasped, the sound muffled by her hands. This place, this whole countryside is a nightmare. I knew something like this would happen. Inside the factory, the air was thick with the smell of oil, rust, and something metallic, like old blood. Lily lay on a dusty concrete floor in a small, windowless office, her wrists and ankles bound tightly with coarse rope that chafed her skin raw. A strip of duct tape sealed her mouth, tasting of chemicals and her own salty tears. Panic was a cold, constricting serpent in her chest. But through it, a sliver of defiance fought to survive. Her left arm was twisted beneath her. With painstaking effort, she flexed her fingers, her small hand fumbling for the smartwatch her father had given her for her birthday. Her captor had missed it. She managed to press her thumb against the side button, holding it down. The screen flickered to life, its faint glow a beacon in the suffocating dark. A tiny icon appeared. Distress signal activated. Hope, fragile and desperate, fluttered in her chest. A moment later, a heavy boot slammed down on her wrist. Lily cried out behind the tape as the screen went black, a spiderweb of cracks spreading across its surface. Clever girl, a voice said. It was chillingly familiar. A figure knelt beside her, peeling the tape from her mouth with a sharp grip that made her yelp. In the dim light filtering from the hallway, she saw his face. It was John Gregg, their neighbor, the one who always waved from his porch, who'd given her a piece of candy just last week. His friendly smile was gone, replaced by a cold, predatory smugness. Didn't think you had it in you, he said, almost conversationally. But that's good. Buyers like them with a bit of spirit. You're my first real job. Going to set me up for a long time. Lily's eyes widened, the friendly neighbor dissolving into a monster before her. My mum has money, she whispered, her voice a hoarse, terrified rouse. Lots of it. I'll tell them to give you whatever you want. Please, just let me go home. John Gregg simply laughed. A dry, hollow sound that offered no comfort. Oh, sweetheart, he said, patting her cheek with a dirty hand. What your mum has is nothing compared to what you're worth. Back on the road, Franklin felt the sudden, sharp vibration against his wrist. He glanced down at his own smartwatch, his heart leaping into his throat. A map had appeared on the screen, and on it, a single, pulsing red dot. It was Lily's emergency beacon. Maggie, look, he yelled, hope surging through him. She's the dot pulsed over the exact location they had just left, the abandoned factory. But before he could process the implications, before he could even turn back, the screen flickered. The map vanished, replaced by the stark words, signal lost. No, Franklin breathed, shaking his wrist as if that could magically restore the connection. No, no, no. The hope vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving a deeper, colder despair in its place. He had been right there. Inside the dark office, John Grech stood up, pulling a burner phone from his pocket. He turned his back on Lily, his voice dropping to a low, businesslike tone as he paced. "Yeah, it's me," he said. "The shipment is secure. A little feisty, but he paused, listening. "Excellent condition. What are the current prices for a girl our age?" "Healthy. No marks, yeah. That'll work. I'll be at the pickup point in 2 hours. Don't be late." The silence in Grandma Susan's house was a living thing, thick and suffocating. It pressed in on her from the living room, where her son Franklin and his wife, Maria, sat like statues carved from grief and anger. Their hushed, circular arguments a venomous whisper in the dark. They had searched the fields, called the police, and now, defeated, had retreated into a fortress of blame. Susan, feeling like a ghost in her own home, slipped out the back door, the worn scream groaning softly behind her. Outside, the late-night air was cold, carrying the scent of damp earth and coming rain. A low, wretched sound drew her past the wilting rose bushes toward the wire cage by the fence. It wasn't a bark of aggression or a whine for attention. It was a sound of pure, helpless sorrow. Lucky, his black coat matted with dirt and dew, was pressed against the bars, his entire body trembling. His whimpering was the only honest expression of pain she had heard all night. Then she saw it, clutched delicately in his mouth. Gleaming in the weak moonlight was Lily's small gold bracelet, the one Susan had given her for her 6th birthday. Lucky didn't drop it. He held it out, his dark, intelligent eyes fixed on hers, pleading with an intensity that transcended species. He knew. The dog knew where Lily was. The screen door slammed open, and Franklin stood silhouetted on the porch, his face a mask of strained patience. "Mom, for God's sake, what are you doing out here? That thing has been making a racket all night. We need to think, not listen to a mutt." "He has her bracelet," Susan said, her voice quiet but clear, cutting through the heavy air. "He's trying to tell us something, Franklin." "He probably just found it in the yard," Franklin snapped, scrubbing a hand over his exhausted face. "He's a dog. He's causing trouble. That's all." Susan looked from her son's dismissive glare to the profound, desperate trust in Lucky's eyes. A lifetime of being minimized, of having her old-world wisdom dismissed as foolishness, coalesced into a single, unshakable decision. Her hands, though wrinkled and trembling slightly, were steady as she reached for the latch on the cage. The metallic click was a gunshot in the stillness. She swung the door open. Lucky didn't wait for a command. He shot out of the cage like an arrow released from a bow, a blur of black fur streaking past the woodpile and onto the winding village path that led away from the house. He paused only for a second, looking back to ensure she was following. "Let's go, boy," she whispered. "Mom, no." Franklin rushed down the steps, his voice cracking with desperation as he grabbed her arm. "This is insane. You can't go running off into the dark after a stray. It's just an animal." Susan pulled her arm from his grasp, her strength surprising them both. She looked at her son, at the man she had raised, and felt a chasm open between them, a divide of logic versus instinct, of city-bred skepticism versus a faith born from the earth. Then she turned her gaze to the path where Lucky waited, a loyal shadow against the moonlight. The choice was not a choice at all. "Lucky is my family," she said, her voice low and fierce, each word a stone laid in the foundation of her resolve. "You don't trust him." "I do." "You don't want him." "I do." She turned her back on her son and walked, then half ran, into the darkness, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She followed the dog, her only guide, through tangled shortcuts and across damp fields, the distant shouts of her son fading behind her, until they were nothing more than echoes. The dog led her unerringly to the one place she never would have considered, John Greg's neat little house at the edge of the village, a place known for its manicured lawn and the overly friendly ways of its owner. Lucky didn't hesitate. He launched himself at the front door, barking with a fury that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. His claws tore at the painted wood, his body a battering ram of single-minded purpose. Lights flickered on inside. The door was wrenched open, and John Gregg stood there, his face a poorly constructed mask of sleepy confusion. "Susan, what in God's name is going on? Get your beast off my property." "Where is she, John?" Susan demanded, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. "She? Who? Are you crazy?" He feigned innocence, but his eyes darted nervously past her, scanning the darkness. "This animal is rabid. He tried to bite me." Lucky, as if to prove the lie, lunged again. This time, his teeth found their mark, clamping onto John Gregg's arm. The man howled, a shriek of genuine pain, and stumbled backward. The sudden movement dislodged his body from the frame, revealing what he'd been trying to conceal: a heavy deadbolt, newly installed, and the edge of a second hidden door just behind the curtain in the hallway. In that same instant, a sound from within the house pierced the chaos. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but to Susan, it was a roar, a whimper. Lily. The sound ignited something primal within her. The frail, ignored grandmother vanished, replaced by matriarch Chin Fire. Her eyes locked onto John Gregg, no longer seeing a neighbor, but a monster. Her voice, when she spoke, was not her own. It was a low, guttural command, filled with a desperate, maternal fury that promised retribution. "Get out of the way." Lights were now on in the neighboring houses. Figures appeared on porches, drawn by the dog's frantic barking and John's pain cries. They saw Susan, a lone, determined figure standing her ground. They saw John Gregg cornered and sweating, his story unraveling with every frantic bark from the dog he'd tried to dismiss. Their murmurs started as whispers, then grew louder, a current of suspicion turning against him. "What's going on, John?" one neighbor called out. "Let her look inside," another added, his voice firm. "If the girl isn't there, she leave." John Gregg's eyes widened in panic, but he was trapped by grandmother's love and by the relentless, unwavering loyalty of the dog they had all written off. Lucky continued to bark, a furious, triumphant sound that was no longer just noise, but the undeniable sound of truth being dragged into the light. The splintering crash of the door was the sound of a promise kept. Susan burst through the shattered wood, her frail body powered by a grandmother's primal fury. The hidden room was just as Lucky's frantic scratching had suggested: a damp, concrete-walled space reeking of mildew and fear. Two men she didn't recognize stood over a small cot, their backs to her, and on that cot, her hands bound with a coarse rope, was Lily. Her face was pale, streaked with tears, her eyes wide with a terror that ripped through Susan's heart like shrapnel. For a frozen moment, the world stopped. The men turned, their faces twisting from surprised, ugly snarls. One of them, a thick-set man with a spiderweb tattoo on his neck, reached for Lily, but Lily's eyes had found her. They locked onto Susan, and then onto the golden-brown dog standing at her side. A low, guttural growl vibrating in his chest. Hope, pure and desperate, ignited in the little girl's eyes. "Grandma, Lucky, help me." The cry wasn't a plea. It was a command, an irrefutable piece of evidence screamed into the suffocating air. It was the only truth that mattered. The room exploded into chaos. As the tattooed man lunged for Lily, Lucky shot forward like a bolt of lightning. He wasn't the gentle companion of the field anymore. He was a guardian, a protector. He clamped his jaws onto the man's thigh, the fabric of his jeans ripping with a satisfying tear. The man howled, staggering back, his focus shifting from the child to the furious animal attached to his leg. The second man, younger and more panicked, grabbed a wooden crate to sling at the dog. But Susan was already moving. She threw herself between him and Lily, shielding her granddaughter with her own body. "You will not touch her," she roared, her voice an ancient, unshakable force. The struggle was a blur of grunts, snarls, and Lily's terrified sobs. Lucky, tenacious and brave, dodged a kick and latched onto the second man's ankle, throwing him off balance. He crashed into a stack of boxes, swearing violently. Through it all, John Gregg stood by the far wall, his face a mask of disbelief and cornered rage, his neighborly facade completely stripped away. He had orchestrated this, the friendly smiles, the small talk over the fence, all a lie. Then, a new sound cut through the pandemonium, faint at first, but growing relentlessly louder, clearer, more beautiful than any church bell. The high, piercing wail of police sirens. Franklin and Maggie, after hours of frantically searching the woods, of calling Lily's name until their voices were raw, they had finally done the one thing Susan had begged them to do from the start. They had called for help, and they had told the police about Susan's crazy theory, about her unshakable faith in her dog. The sirens screamed to a halt directly outside. Heavy footsteps pounded on the porch, followed by the authoritative shout of police. "Open up." The traffickers froze, their eyes darting towards the only exit, now blocked by Susan. John Gregg's face went slack with a coward's despair. It was over. The new door, the one leading into the main house, was kicked in with a percussive boom. Uniformed officers swarmed the room, weapons drawn. The scene they found was unequivocal. Two criminals, one nursing a bleeding leg, a terrified homeowner, a defiant old woman shielding a crying child, and a loyal dog standing guard, his tail now giving a single, triumphant wag. Hands were cuffed. Rights were read in a flat monotone that belied the horror of the crime. As John Gregg and his accomplices were led away, their faces etched with stunned defeat, Lily scrambled into Susan's arms. She buried her face in her grandmother's neck, her small body trembling with the aftershocks of her ordeal. Susan held her tight, whispering reassurances, her own tears finally falling, hot and cleansing. Lucky pressed against their legs, nudging Lily's hand with his wet nose. A silent, steady presence. He was the hero of the hour, and he seemed to know it. The next morning, the sun streamed through the windows of Susan's small cottage, chasing away the last shadows of the previous night's terror. The scent of lavender and baking bread filled the air, a familiar comfort that felt more precious than ever. Lily sat on the worn floral sofa, wrapped in her favorite blanket, curled at her feet, his head resting on her lap. Was Lucky. He was no longer the fierce protector, the gentle friend, his breathing soft and even. Lily's hand moved rhythmically through his fur, her touch a silent